I guess just start off by telling me what it means to be here with this film right now at Sundance.
Sure. You know, I've been making films independently since I was 21, and Sundance has been in my life. I think my first film came out here in 1988, and it's just an incredible opportunity to take this thing that you've made that you don't know if it walks and talks and functions and is three-dimensional, and introduce it to an audience. And that's one side, but the other side is it just gives you so much motor behind you, because Sundance is such a seal of approval. So as independents, we really need that. You're constantly trying to leap to another tree branch, and Sundance is that next tree branch, and then distribution, and then getting distribution right, and so it's really important.
And am I correct that you've won the grand jury prize for your documentaries twice?
No, I won the grand jury prize and best cinematography.
Oh, for two different.
Same film.
Oh, same film.
First,
Okay.
my first film. Yeah.
So what is it like transitioning to having a narrative feature here, and the way your film explores memory is almost like a documentary style at some points. It feels like sort of a blend between the two.
Um, Moving to fiction from documentary, I think, was harder than I thought. I mean, I love research, obviously, because I've made documentaries. And in documentaries, I always think like the shooting is the research, the writing, the script is the editing of the documentary. And so the research and writing the script was something that was very familiar to me. But working with actors, we had 120 people on our crew, producers, name actors, schedules, shooting out of sequence. It was tough. I did a lot of prep to prep myself to learn how to work with actors.
Did it feel natural to tell a true story in the fictional framework?
Yeah, I think I love non-true stories as a viewer, but I am really interested in art and impact. And so I'm always trying to do something that is incredibly, on the edge, cutting edge in terms of language, but also has impact. I couldn't, see myself making a comedy, for example. I love comedies.
What would be your call to action to young and emerging storytellers and artists?
Oh, I would definitely say be authentic to your own voice and your own vision and what images you have. The sad part is that we tend to teach people to mimic. And yes, you need ground under you. I know a lot about narrative structure, don't get me wrong. I've read every book, I've taken every course, but once you have the ground under you, then you also have to be able to be free to go where the story wants to go and what will best express that story. So there's too much pressure to look like everybody else. I'm completely against it. It also, frankly, doesn't make good films.
You need to know the rules to be able to break them.
That was a quicker way to say it.
You helped me get to ask you about victimhood, because I thought that was really interesting what you were saying about how we should erase that word from our vocabulary. And I'm wondering, in particular, as a male, what could I do if a loved one has suffered sexual assault to be supportive? Or what should I do?
I think that first of all, prior to what happens, it's more about the ongoing relationship, that really working on having open channels with the people you love, that you can talk about anything, that nothing is too painful. A lot of people are afraid of pain, and I get it, but I think we have to learn that pain is human, and the most thing that we can do to people we love is to tell them, I can take it. I'm here for you, and whatever you're going to say is not too painful for me. And really hold the space. And that starts usually way before an event. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and I had loving parents, but very much an old school model, like children are to be seen and not heard. And there was no concept that, that left me incredibly lonely and isolated because nobody was talking to me. And the adults were, for me, very suspect. They weren't people I could trust. So the first thing is creating trustful relationships with those you love and saying nothing is off the table.
And that's something you want to broadcast with your film to help people be more receptive to that.
Yeah, so that, we can really be there for each other when bad things happen, and help those we love to be resilient and to go through whatever they need to go through. It may be that you have to cry for weeks, or it may be that you have to shut down for weeks. That's also legitimate. It may be that you don't want to talk for 10 years, or in my case, couldn't even handle the word abuse. I always called it a relationship. So it's just accepting that people need also to do what they need to do to go on and to survive.
I loved how your film had the different ages of the character confronting one another. I think that's something we all relate to, something we all do in our minds.
Right.
I'd love it if you could tell me a bit more about the scene where she confronts her 13-year-old self and she's saying, "I'm a hero, not a victim."
That's a really easy, it's of course a fantasy scene because it's what I remember feeling. So, and it's just really that in the film, the present self and the child are really in conflict. Because as an adult, I want to go, what the fuck are you doing? Stop. But the child in me at that time was running towards agency, as many adolescents are. So I think that weirdly, because I was the one who ended the relationship with Bill and Mrs. G, as hard as that was, I felt I saved myself, and it gave me a lot of power. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't save our children, we should save our children, but in my case that didn't happen, and so I both felt empowered, but I also felt empowered because they'd given me all this attention.
Right, it seemed like agency was what drew you to it in the first place.
Exactly, and agency is what got me out, both things. Now, there was an effect, don't get me wrong, and I definitely have many things I struggle with all these years, so it both gave and it took. As a child, the problem with children is that they don't know the price of things. Because I remember as a kid thinking, I don't know, what's going to happen, but I'm willing to pay the price because it's unknown. Now, as an adult, I'm like, stop, don't do that. You're going to be suffering for years. But as a kid, you're so naive.
Right.
That's why it's sexual abuse, because kids actually don't know what they're trading.
That was a really powerful aspect of the film, is how the two ages of the character are at odds, but you really empathize with both of them. Neither one of them feels, in the wrong.
Right.
You associate with both perspectives.
Right.
Which I guess is the whole conflict you're getting at about sexual abuse.
Yes. Also, adults don't want to accept the complicated feelings children feel, whether it be, as I did, love, whether it be shame, whether it be needing attention, whether it be guilt. There's all sorts of feelings, and the adults and the media just want to flatten it into bad, good, and I feel like that really hurts us preventing it and healing from it.
Right. I also felt as if the film gave Bill at least a very human angle.
I hope so.
It didn't, villainize him cartoonishly, or it was almost more disturbing that he had such a, I guess, deeply fleshed out perspective.
That's what we were really going for, and when Laura suggested Jason Ritter, it was precisely because she thought he could do that. And I'm so grateful to him because he really goes against the type of what an abuser is. And frankly, 93% apparently of abusers are known by the children, either their family, their school, their coaches, they're not that, stranger danger thing we have, which means those people have been basically accepted by the community, we've got 5 standing ovations, which is really amazing. I've had very well-received films, but never like this.
I feel like of all the films I've seen at the festival, this is the real conversation starter. I feel like this is the one people will really talk about.
Sure.
What conversations do you want to see being had or started or continued?
Every conversation. I just want to blow it open and let's talk about everything, and let's talk about it again from the point of view of prevention. How can we help parents and educators and community prevent these things from happening? Let's help parents. You don't want to destroy your kids' freedom also, so how do we keep them safe but let them grow up,
Right.
So many conversations to how do you letting survivors actually open their very complicated stories,
It's that openness and awareness that you were talking about, and it must have lit the fire under you while you were finding funds for the movie to find out that people weren't super receptive, and U.S. financiers, I think you said, were hard to find. Did that make you feel like the story was even more important to tell?
I've never made a film that was easy to finance, so you just hunker down and it's like by any means necessary. That would be another thing I would really say to young filmmakers is people think if it's right, if it's good, money's going to fall out of the trees or some producer's going to come get you. And I think the real surviving filmmakers, they fundraise and they're creative about it, and that would be a real message for me. Like, be creative, like think out of the box. Like philanthropic funds have never been used for a fiction film. Let's do that. I was one of the first people on my last project. It's a very early Kickstarter person. Fantastic. Like that's a tool in your toolbox. Like you can do that, or you can, but these are only tools. Every project is different. Don't be conditioned to think somebody's going to come up and hand you money. Be really, really active.
Sure. Yeah, finding the funds is an art form in itself.
Is an art. I totally think that. And people also, especially women, are very hesitant about money.